walking with the Lord doesn't mean you have to selfishly live for yourself or give up your dreams. That He's giving us dreams as giant clues as to the way we're wired, the way we're uh, meant to operate. And it's not really about whether that dream comes true specifically. Sometimes it is like he might have that, but it's also more than that. It's like intel on yourself. It's like data on how did God make Erik? How did God make Graham? And like, I want to get as much data on myself as possible so I can start to better know myself. So as our friend John Maxwell, who's at that event, has that great line, you got to find yourself, to know yourself, to improve yourself, to get over yourself so you can give yourself away. And I think that's the whole point of life is better know yourself so you can live in alignment, have joy, have purpose. But a lot of that's going to come from serving people out of your uniqueness, out of what gives you joy. And then everyone's winning because you're not doing stuff you hate. You're doing stuff you love and it's helping people. And it's like, wow, maybe God was onto something by giving every one of us different desires and dreams.
Graham, you're a husband, you're a father, TEDx and keynote speaker, you're a coach. You're also the host of multiple podcasts. You're an author, including your new book, Rebel, which is available for pre-order right now, and so much more, man. Thank you for your time, dude. I appreciate it.
Bro, I'm excited to be on the show, man. It's fun to connect with you in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and now I'm glad to jump on the show. It's an honor.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, it was so much fun to meet you in person just a few weeks back at our friend Tyler's event there. And man, I got to step into the MC role and do that and then just get to hear your story and how you just passionately speak life into people, man. You just did an amazing job there. So I just want to say thank you for taking time to come up here and do that, man.
Oh, dude, it's my pleasure. It was fun.
I like to kick the show off by going back to the early days, though. Like, where did you grow up? What was childhood like for you?
Yeah, military family. We moved around a lot when I was really young,
Okay.
but grew up in Virginia. And pretty much my childhood was all about music. I was obsessed with music. I was a singer, musical theater kid. I was in band. I was in choir. I was in all male a cappella groups, which is virtually like a boy band. So,
Nice.
but I wanted to be a rock star. So that was kind of what I spent my time when I wasn't playing video games as a kid. I was writing songs, playing all the battle of the bands, learning how to produce music and just make records. And for me, it wasn't like a passion. It was like, this is what I'm going to do for a living. And I had enough talent that other people saw it and said, I think you could do this. And that's what I worked hard at doing, man. In college, I tell people I was on track to get a record deal. Like all of my efforts were pushed towards that. We made a record, got a producer out of Nashville, session players, made the
Wow.
thing. And that was the plan. That wasn't God's plan though. It didn't quite work out the way I
Sure.
thought it, but that was my childhood. That was a trajectory is like, let's get signed and make a run at the music thing.
Wow. Man, that's awesome, dude. I grew up, my dad always played like, tons of music. We were always watching, MTV back when they played videos, and then like I
Oh
grew
yeah.
up raised by my grandma in the house that my dad grew up in. And so I would be at her house and I'd be playing Elvis on 8 tracks way back in the day. And so it just became this awesome, huge fan of Elvis throughout the years. And my goal was always to be in the music business, though I don't know how to play anything. But landed a job with Universal Records in Seattle in my early 20s. Had to lie to get the job, but was there for a full year running, meet and greets with bands and stuffing posters and things like that. It wasn't quite as cool as I'd hoped, except for, it was super fun. But, being the intern, you're the bottom of the guys, bottom of the pole. So you have to do things like, so I had to dress up like a chicken and go out to the ghetto and pass out chicken and beer stuff for Ludacris's album. And, so that was, that was my step into the music
Wow.
business.
That's a great story, man. I almost would want that story just to be able to tell that story. That's good, man.
It was interesting, being dressed like a chicken and literally passing out KFC buckets of KFC chicken and Ludacris's album Beer and Chicken. It was awesome, man.
Oh,
Who,
only in America.
right? Totally. I mean, you lead worship now at your church, which is awesome. But what was that moment like for you when you fully stepped into that relationship with Jesus? Did something happen that inspired you to just fully surrender in that moment?
Yeah, I was 16 years old. I got duped to go into a Young Life camp in
Okay.
Colorado. So
Yeah.
Young Life was hanging out at my high school, and that's where all the cute girls were. So I started going to Young Life, and
Sure.
then they said, "Oh, come to camp. It's really fun. They have zip lines. It's in Colorado." I was like, okay, sure. Went to summer camp, and then I was the first time I heard a gospel presentation. I mean, I'd been in church as a churchgoer my
Mhm.
whole life, but they never actually open the Bible very much, which is kind of strange for a
Yeah.
church. And they didn't really talk about Jesus very much, which is very strange for a church. And if they did, they talked about him as a good, good man, a good example. Like you should be kind to people and all that kind of stuff. They never talked about, how you can have a relationship with him, how sin separates us, all that stuff. So it was like, I'm 16. I had never heard this message. I'm like, oh, that makes so much more sense why the dude died like on the cross. Like, why would
Yeah.
anybody willingly do that? It seems like a sacrificial moment, but I didn't get why. So that was 16 for me. Accepted Jesus. I didn't know what to do with that after that. So I went back to my normal life of living for myself.
Sure.
um, but the cool thing, right, is that God like gives us desires, right? So I've learned, and I read about this a little bit in the book. I mean, a lot about in the book, really, in Rebel is, you know, when I didn't get my dream of being a rock star, and the album's labels, well, excuse me, labels were coming back with like no's and not really, and like the only offers I were getting were development deals, which are like, we like you enough to sign you, but not enough to pay you, and
Mm.
when I realized, man, if I'm going to pursue this, I'm not going to make any money right now. And I was getting married, I had to make a choice, and I chose to provide for my new wife instead of dragging her through that whole mess.
Yeah.
But I was bitter at God because I was like, man, I'm following you now. Like, this is who I am. Like, this is the dream you put in my heart. What am I supposed to do with this? Do I have to just give up on this thing and just
Mhm.
punch a clock and do something I don't feel like I'm made to do? And so it took me probably 4 or 5 years of floating and wrestling and to figure out that, wait a second, walking with the Lord doesn't mean you have to selfishly live for yourself or give up your dreams. That He's giving us dreams as giant clues as to the way we're wired, the way we're uh, meant to operate. And it's not really about whether that dream comes true specifically. Sometimes it is like he might have that, but it's also more than that. It's like intel on yourself. It's like data on how did God make Erik? How did God make Graham? And like, I want to get as much data on myself as possible so I can start to better know myself. So as our friend John Maxwell, who's at that event, has that great line, you got to find yourself, to know yourself, to improve yourself, to get over yourself so you can give yourself away. And I think that's the whole point of life is better know yourself so you can live in alignment, have joy, have purpose. But a lot of that's going to come from serving people out of
Mm.
your uniqueness, out of what gives you joy. And then everyone's winning because you're not doing stuff you hate. You're doing stuff you love and it's helping people. And it's like, wow, maybe God was onto something by giving every one of us different desires and dreams.
Oh, yeah, that's so good, man. For sure. I know I've had those moments throughout my life where I'm like, man, God, why aren't you opening this door? Why isn't this working? Why isn't this happening? Like getting
Yep.
frustrated. And then it was like God was like kindly humbled me and said, nope, you've got to take a break, right? I need you to rely on me more and not so much on that. And but continue to pursue those goals and dreams and things like that, man. And what a cool thing. I want to get into your book, Rebel. Find yourself by not following the crowd. It's available for pre-sale right now. The foreword was written by John Gordon, who's been on my show as well. Just a great dude. I can't wait to get my copy, but congratulations on this book, man. Uh, what is the premise of this book for those who don't know? And like, what's the journey you're taking readers through here?
Yeah. So my premise is life is frustrating and disappointing largely because we're living out of alignment, like I was
Mhm.
alluding to. And
Yeah.
the reason is like nobody knows who they are or why they're here. And it's because society is all about giving you a bunch of predetermined paths that you can quote unquote choose from, but you have to conform to these paths. So whether it's coming out of high school or college and like this is what you got to do. This is what sometimes people's parents literally tell them this is what you're going to do with your life. Like it could be that direct, like conform to what I'm telling you to do, or it's just sort of culturally what everyone's doing, how they're raising their kids. If that's how everyone raises their kids, okay, I guess I'll do that. If that's how everyone thinks about career or money or health, like people, we just copy what everyone else is doing, largely because there's a lot of societal pressure to be like everyone else. Even though we're in a world that says we celebrate diversity, we really don't. We just, there's a be like this is the way the cultural moment is saying we should be, which is not diversity, it's conformity. Let's all be the same. So there's
Mm.
some of that pressure. Also, bro, we're if you have kids or a life, you're tired. Like life is busy, you're
Yeah.
exhausted. So we end up abdicating our decision making to others. That's why we copy, like, well, how does he do that? How does she do that? I guess I'll just be like that because I don't have time to think about it and make important decisions for myself. And then we just want to blend in. We don't want to be the person that's different. We don't want to stick out. We really, it's sort of groupthink. It's the way I think culturally we're wired to just like, it's easier to safer to be like everybody else. Keep your head down.
Yeah.
Some cultures, this is really beaten in their brains. But even in America, no one really wants to stand out. So my premise is that that's why you're frustrated, because it's all of that conformity is causing you to not be who you are. And so what I
Yeah.
want to do in the book is help you find who you are. So, because once you do that, you're going to get three things. You're going to be more successful in every part of your life, however you define that. Like, you will never be as successful as you could be if you're not operating out of your uniqueness. You got to find your uniqueness. That will lead to your success. Whether people like it or not, doesn't matter. That's what's going to propel you to your success in your marriage, in your business, in your finances. So more success, more satisfaction, which is not the same as success, by the way. You can be successful and not satisfied. So we want to have a life that's full of satisfaction. Like, I love this, not just I'm good at this. And people say, wow, look at you, Erik. It's so amazing. But you hate it. Like, you want to love it. So satisfaction and more service to others, which we alluded to a second ago. Like, I think we're wired not for ourselves only, but for impact with other people. So how do you have more success, more satisfaction, and more service to others? My premise is you be you,
Yeah.
do it your way. Be it,
Mhm.
I call that being a rebel. A rebel opposes what everyone else is doing. It's not trying to be different for different sake. You're just trying to say, do I like where this little stream, we're all in a stream and it's flowing, it's all going somewhere. To be a rebel these days is to step out of the stream and say, do I like where that stream is going? If I don't, where do I want to go in life?
Mhm.
In sort of these six core areas I talk about in the book: your work or career, your finances, how you manage your time, your relationships, your health, and your spirituality. Look at those six areas. Do I like how culture and the people around me at large, microculture, your friends and family, how those six areas are looking for them? Not to judge them, but you have to ask these questions, because if you don't like where it's going, you're going to have to go somewhere else. And that will look like rebellion. It will look
Mhm.
like being different. And people will push back, but it's okay, because this is your life. And so the book has a 5-part framework to help you do that. Well, that's nice, Graham. How do you do that?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of my story, but really it's a framework of 5 steps. It's like a coaching session in a book. If you and I were to work together, I would walk you through these 5 steps. It's not easy, it's not fast, but it's clear. And each main core chapter, there's 8 chapters, 5 of them are the framework kind of in the middle. Each chapter on the framework has an exercise to go with it that you can do, so you can read it and then do the work. It's self-discovery, but I made it real light, real approachable, real applicable. It's a short book. I mean, John Gordon wrote the foreword. He's the king of short books. So, like,
Yeah.
just a snappy, tight book that you'll actually want to finish and then hopefully actually want to do. And then by the time you get to the end of the book, you're going to know so much more about who you are, what you value. You will literally have a set of personal values that you will create by the end of the book,
Mhm.
that will help you in all your decision making. It really will. It may not mean people will like what you're doing, but you will have a lot more clarity on where to go and what you want to build over the next 3 or so years. And that's going to bring you a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment.
Man, dude, I cannot wait to deep dive into this book, and I love that you talked a lot about it when you spoke recently at that event we were at. But it's so good, and I love that you mentioned on your website, like, most of us are living that life crafted by other people, and you just spoke about that. Like, we're kind of living that, whatever people tell us to do. We're kind of going down that path, and we have to find that uniqueness, man. And I think that can get uncomfortable, though, right? People are like, man, I don't want to get out of my comfort zone and be the rebel and do things that people aren't telling me to do. How do people step out of that comfort zone and start to approach that rebel lifestyle?
Bro, it's like anything else in life when it comes to change. You've got to have enough pain of the way things are. As Dave Ramsey says, you got to be sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like,
Yeah.
no one's gonna make you be a rebel or do this unless you really are, like, you're fed up with the way things are going. So for me, you know, I tried for the music dream that died. And so then I'm like, okay, well, I guess I was stupid for chasing my dreams.
Mhm.
Maybe dreaming is foolish. Maybe my guidance counselor was right when she said, you need to go to college, you need to get a safe job, like, don't pursue the music thing. Maybe all my friends who are getting normal jobs are right. So I started to conform. And this is something we talk about in the book called the identity crisis intersection. If you've ever had a dream, whether it's relational, career, money, whatever, and then that dream dies, like, she walks out, he walks out, the kid dies, the economy changes, and you lose the business. Or for me, like, I didn't quite get my dream. Like, all of us have had a dream die, big or small. What do you
Yeah.
do when the dream dies? Well, at that point, you're at an identity crisis intersection, because it's a fork in the road. So it's an intersection, but it's also, when your dream dies, part of you dies with it, right? It's a part of
Sure.
your identity. That's why it hurts so much. So I was at an identity crisis intersection, and the two choices are: you can conform, get right back like everybody else, like, put your head back down. That was stupid. Whatever I was trying to do, that was dumb. Never going to do that again. Too painful, too embarrassing. People were like, "Why'd you do that?" So I conformed for 4 or 5 years, But then I got to a point where I'm like, this isn't fulfilling. Like, I literally hate this. I'm doing what everyone else is doing. And for me, Graham, this is not working. I was out of alignment. And
Mm.
then not only that, I lost 2 jobs during the Great Recession in 10 months, right after buying a house, having a baby, right? And my wife and I were on food stamps for 18 months. So now I'm like 26 and I'm really sucking in life. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this
Yeah.
isn't working. I kind of had to go back and I almost had to have this conversation with God of like, was I actually not stupid or foolish for dreaming? Was there something about my dream that was actually helpful and giving me some data on myself, like I mentioned earlier? Maybe the rock star dream wasn't the point as much as there was something about that dream that I needed to pay attention to. And I actually made the mistake of conforming. And you go back to that identity crisis intersection, you have another choice, which is to dream again.
Mhm.
And that could mean dream that same dream a second time, a third time, 100th time. That could mean, like I did, dream a new version of that dream. Like, what's something related to music that I can do? I started a YouTube channel and a blog, and that turned into the largest music recording YouTube channel on the planet, the Recording Revolution. It became a 7-figure business. It,
Come
it
on.
launched me into a coaching business as a business coach, and now writing books and speaking. Like, none of that would have happened, and I've made way more money and been home. Like, it takes me like 5 to 10 hours a week to run this business. Like, I'm home all the time, making plenty of money, impacting millions of people, doing music. I'm not technically a rock star. It isn't exactly what I imagined, but because what I'm doing didn't exist when I was a kid, I couldn't have imagined it. So
Sure.
all that to say, like, for me, I had to get fed up enough to try something different, as
Mhm.
scary and weird as it was. And it was hard telling people I'm not applying for another job during the recession. I'm just going to start a blog about music recording. And people will look at you like, what? Like,
Yeah.
what is that? What, how are you going to make that work? I'm like, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I got to do something different. And maybe there's something here that could work for me. So for me, being a rebel started in my career path. For
Mhm.
you, it might mean, I'm going to pull my kids out of the school system and I want to homeschool, even though people are going to judge me hard. Or the
Yeah.
opposite. I was homeschooling. Now I'm going to put them back in the school system, even though my homeschool families are going to judge me hard. Like, whatever you do, someone's going to judge you, and you got to be unafraid of that fear of that judgment. Or even I fear judgment, by the way. I'm a people pleaser still. But you have to have a bigger desire to do something that's in alignment with who you are, to change your life. People have a plan for your life, and it's not God's plan or your plan. Like, you got to decide, God, what do you have for me? What do I want out of life? And no one's going to give it to you. You got to go chase it. God's not even going to give it to you. He will
Yeah.
give you giant clues and make a lot of open doors for you, but you got to walk through them, bro. And
Yeah.
so it took me enough pain. That's the long answer to the short answer of, when you want it bad enough, you'll do something different.
Mm. Man, yeah, that's so true. So good. And I've been there, man. My wife and I, we had to rely on God when we moved to Idaho, man. We didn't know anybody. We came down here and we were literally, our rent was like 900 something bucks a month. And I was taking home $630 every 2 weeks. And we were on food stamps and we were on WIC, man. And had
Yep.
2 babies at the house. And I'm like, I don't know how we're paying the bills, but God's providing here, man. And God, what the heck do you want? You told us to come to Idaho, and we felt like we were, did we make a mistake? You start going through that, all that brain just starts racking there. Man, crazy. I want to talk about the bonuses here though, because the bonuses that you're giving away with just this book is massive, like $300 value, but the value number is really isn't as much as like you got John Gordon and Pete Vargas and all these people on the bonus. Like, what are folks going to get when they pre-order this book, man?
Yeah, we're trying to incentivize you to pre-order. And so, like, we're going crazy. Like, you'd be crazy not to do this. It's a
Yeah.
$25 book, but if you pre-order it before September 3rd, when the book's coming out, like, we're going to throw in a master class teaching the entire book with John Gordon. So it's like an hour class where, like, he hosts it and I'm walking you through the entire 5-part Rebel framework. It's a deep dive. Like, you can so you get that master class. I did an entire 3-hour summit, the Life Giving Online Business Summit. So if you have an online business or any kind of business, or you want to start one, we brought in one of the top YouTubers, and Sean Cannell, who like helps you build on YouTube. Rory Vaden, who's a master at personal branding and getting your messaging clear. Pete Vargas, who's a master at leveraging stages, like digital stages, like podcasts and webinars, and even physical stages. We brought in MJ Gordon, not related to John Gordon, but she is a work-life optimization coach, helping you like not burn yourself out, taking care of your mind, your body, so you can stay in the game long enough. And then I talked on Rebel, how to find your uniqueness. So it's like 3 hours of world-class speakers and me in there, and you get that recording absolutely free. We put together a journal, the Rebel Journal, which is, I took the 5 core exercises from the book and pulled them into a PDF that you can download and start doing. So you can do these self-guided exercises even before the book comes out.
Mhm.
There's a 30-day Rebel challenge, which is like 30 days of accountability coaching in your inbox from me. Whenever you click play to kick that off, you'll get 30 days from that moment whenever you're ready to go, where I'm going to drop in and teach you a nugget from the book, challenge you, get you to think so you can have some accountabilities you do the book or before the book. And I have a Rebel community that you get to be a part of. It's kind of like my launch team, but those people just got access to the manuscript before anybody else. So if you want to read the book before anybody else, you get a digital copy of the book that's just private. I'm in there going live, doing stuff. So all of that just for pre-ordering the book at therebelbook.com, or really anywhere you want to pre-order the book, but bring your receipt to therebelbook.com at the very least, enter it in there so you can get the pre-order bonuses instantly.
Dude, people would be dumb not to order this book for 25
I'm
bucks and you get all
trying.
of that stuff,
I'm
man.
trying, bro. Yeah, it's so much value. Like, if you want your life changed, you have 25 bucks, like you'll get literally thousands of dollars. Like 300 is really low. You're right. It's way more valuable than that, but
Yeah,
that's, on the low end what we could sell those things for. But bro, it's just I'm trying to give you some people learn better with video, some people learn
sure.
better with interactive exercises, some people look better. So different modalities to help you implement this stuff, whether you're doing it before you read the book or while you read the book, it's just there to help you.
Yeah, man, people need to get on this right now. I'll put a link in the notes below, but so rad. I've been podcasting since 2017. You have actually two podcasts. You've got your own, the Graham Cochrane Show, but you also do one with your wife Shay called Family Goals, which is really cool. I've listened to both shows. They're amazing shows. People need to go listen to them. And my wife and I have had conversation about like, hey, should we start a podcast? So we, she's more the funny one. I'm more like the business person, right? And so she has a lot of like great insights into like, I'm the guy flying the kite. I'm the kite up here, and she's on the ground going, maybe we should probably think about it this way, right? And so, like, what's the podcast? What's it like podcasting with your wife? And how would you say that podcasting with your wife has helped in your relationship with her?
Man, yeah. So the Family Goals podcast is a long time coming. We felt like a few years ago, God started to say, you and Shay need to collaborate on something, because she has her own business. We've always had separate businesses,
Yeah.
and we do a lot of life together as a family, and we've led a lot of like Bible studies and communities, and we church planted together, all that kind of stuff. So we do a lot together, but we've never formally had something that we
Mhm.
do together. And so we said, what's the obvious first easiest thing we could do together? And that's like start a podcast. I have a lot of experience in this world. She doesn't, but she's a great communicator and teacher. So I promised, hey, I'll put it together if we can just come together and do this. And one of the things that we get asked about almost more than anything is, how do you think about marriage? Because we're still married. It's like you, very similar season of life. Like, we're still married 19 years in. We've got two teenage kids. So we talk, and we're both entrepreneurs and we're both Christians. So it's like, how can we talk about balancing all of that? Parenting, marriage, faith, business, and money. And so that was the angle. And it's been wild to see the impact,
Mhm.
because it's interesting. There's tons of young families and old who are like, they're looking for counsel. They're looking for like, I need that couple to mentor me or something. And like, no one's really talking about this, at least
Yeah,
certainly not from a Christian perspective. It's not a Christian podcast, but we get our wisdom from the Bible. So you're going to hear a lot of that
sure.
because it's true, whether you believe it or not. Like, it works in real life.
Yeah.
So we're teaching a lot of stuff that's like super practical, and sometimes just giving people help, like encouragement. Like, sometimes if you got young kids, you're just like, is it always going to be like this? And you need someone who's 10 years down the road saying, no, it actually gets easier and better. And there's new challenges, but it gets more fun when
Yeah.
they can wipe their own butt, buckle their own seatbelt, like, pack their own lunch. And so it's both fun and funny and practical as well. And we feel like it's, for us, as a way to disciple the world through a medium that, is easy to get out one to many. So it's been fun to do it together. It's been a challenge to learn, okay, I'm used to podcasting by myself, where I can talk about what I want, how I want, and not having someone interrupt me. So
Yeah.
learning like how that dance of like, okay, babe, you can't, like, let me just finish my thought, and then you can have your thought. And we're
Yeah.
learning how to do that together. But it's been good. It gives us something to work on together, and
Mhm.
it's good to see like what's meaningful to people and helping, and we're learning a lot in the process. But yeah, it's been fun.
Come on. Yeah, that's so cool, man. Yeah, people need to be listening to that show. I remember like my wife and I, we've been married for 19 years as well this year. And going when we're getting
Congratulations,
married,
man.
thank you. You as well. But yeah, I remember when we first got married, we went through Christian counseling, and it was interesting, and they were great people, and but it was like, I wish that we had a podcast, right? I wish that we had videos or someone that could walk us through more than like the one or two sessions that we had for pre-marriage counseling, right? And then after that, it was like neither of us knew what a good marriage looked like. We knew what we didn't want in marriage, but we didn't have an
Yep.
example of what a good marriage looked like. And so, man, it's so important to be able to do that. And man, so good. What would you say on your journey so far as an entrepreneur, as a husband, as a father? Like, what's been the most important lesson that you've learned through that?
Man, I've learned it only recently in the last 2 years. I'm ashamed to admit, but it's to really listen to God's voice.
Mm,
Um, I've always read the Bible, but like really have a practice of like listening, prayer, journaling, like asking God specific questions while I'm Bible reading. So I'm getting in His Word, but and believing that He could actually speak to me. Like in my, for me, I hear God's voice. Like they sound like my own thoughts. Like it's not
mhm.
an audible. I don't hear God's voice audibly,
Yeah.
but I'll get thoughts that pop in my head when I ask specific questions, and I know they're alien. They come from outside of me because I never would have said it that way or thought that thought. Or sometimes I'll get a visual, and so learning to like bring God. It sounds really basic, but bring God into my decision making. Like literally, Lord, what should I do with this team member? And God saying like, you need to let her go. And like,
Mhm.
okay, wow. Like, so I'm literally making hiring and firing decisions with counsel as if he's like on my board of advisors, like, hey, what do you think about this?
Sure.
So like bringing him in for very practical stuff. I've been in transition as I'm writing books and speaking now, like shutting down offers, taking speaking opportunities, what book to write. This whole book, God told me to write. And I'm
Mhm.
like, this is not what my publisher signed me on. They signed me as like a business author. My first book was a very clear business book. Like, I don't know about this, God. He's like,
Yeah.
this is the book I want you to write. Okay. So I pitch it to the publisher. They're like, this is great. When can you get the manuscript in? And I'm like, what? So it's just been this journey of maybe I should have been talking to the Lord a little more consistently and asking, not just reading the Bible like it's just generic scripture for all people, but that's the logos, like God's word that He wrote, But there's also the rhema of God, the utterance of God. Like God can speak both through that word and apply it to you specifically, or He can tell you, Eric, hey man, you need to go talk to that person on the street corner and like buy her lunch or buy him. Like He can tell you, so it's not in the Bible, but He can
Yeah.
speak to you. And that sort of learning to hear that part of God's voice and realizing that, John 16:13, when the Spirit of truth comes, Jesus says, He's going to guide you into all truth, which
Mhm.
means all categories of life, not just Christianity truth. And
Yeah.
He will tell you of things to come. Okay, so the Spirit can tell me like what's around the corner.
Mhm.
And that's powerful to kind of have some heads up of like, hey, this is going to happen, or I want you to do this. And you get, so that's sort of like foreknowledge that I don't have, but God is willing to sometimes open the corridor of heaven and show me a little bit if I'm paying attention. And
Yeah.
this is something we talk about in Rebel, actually, even though it's not a Christian book, but in the third part of the framework is doing an inner story audit of like the things you're telling yourself in your head so you can quiet that narrative so you
Mhm.
can hear the still small voice of God, or if you're not a Christian, intuition or your gut, whatever. But I think
Sure.
God wants to speak to us and lead us, but he doesn't yell. You got to quiet the noise to hear that guidance. And so for me, I'm like 2 years fresh off of learning how to do this. And I'm like, dude, where have this been my whole life? This would have been
Yeah.
helpful.
Right. Oh man. So important to just quiet yourself and listen. And I had a pastor on my show a few weeks back, and he mentioned something that he did, and I started to implement it because it just sounded so rad, and it's been a game changer for me. But he said, I made a covenant with God that said, when I wake up, I'm not going to look at my cell phone to look at emails or social media or anything like that until I've had my quiet time with God. Because so often we wake up and the first thing we do is we look at our phone and we get stuck in social
Sure.
media and reels. And I said, man, what a cool thing. I'm going to make that covenant with God. And so I just said, God, I'm not going to touch my phone until I've spent time with you and I've read word and I'm worshiping and pray. And man, started to implement that about a month ago. And it's just been a game changer for me spiritually and just growing in God and going, man, I don't need the crap. Like I wake up without an alarm. I don't have to look at my phone. I just get up and, come upstairs and spend some time in prayer. And it's been a game changer for sure.
That's awesome.
I like to finish the show with a fun question. Since you're a music guy, I'm a music guy myself. My first concert was Richard Marx way back in the day, but spent a couple years with Universal managing bands and things like that. But what's a favorite band for you, or what type of music do you like to listen to now?
Man, I grew up in, I was like early 90s kid, so I loved the grunge scene. So
Yeah.
Soundgarden, Stone Temple Pilots, like all that Seattle music scene was just my absolute jam. That's how I started to learn to play guitar, listening to those records. And then I have like a secret love for the band Rush from
Come on.
yeah, like
Yeah, dude. I
so
love it,
like
dude.
Tom Sawyer and Spirit of
Yeah.
Radio. Like my dad kind of got me hooked on Rush, and like bro, I have like all their albums. I've seen them in concert. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
usually the 90s grunge scene, but then they're like the only 80s band 70s band. I mean, they've been around forever. Like that,
Yeah.
I absolutely love.
Dude, Rush is such a good band. There's no shame in that.
Right? There is no shame, but some people are like, what? His voice is so high. I'm like, dude, these guys are playing three instruments at once, like a keyboard
Right?
with their feet and a bass and then singing. Like, come on, just observe the greatness.
Right? Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah, the music scene for me definitely was the rock, the Corn, the Rob Zombies,
Yep.
the Nirvana early on, and Rage Against the
Yep.
Machine. I saw those
Oh
guys
yeah.
in concert at a venue out in Washington. It was an outdoor venue, held 20,000 people. I mean, just
Come on.
crazy. Biggest mosh pit I've ever been in was Rage Against the Machine. And
That's awesome,
uh,
bro.
but yeah, by far, man, the music is something. Even today, like as a Christian, I'm like, we always have music running around in the house. My kids are music. If it's quiet, I'm like, man, we need to turn something on, right? Like I always have to have music playing. But man, Graham, I love your story. I love your message. I love what you're doing for folks, and I cannot wait to get my hands on the book Rebel, man. And people need to go and pre-order this right now, man. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate you.
Eric, I appreciate you, man. It's been fun.
Hey, if you've ever thought about starting a podcast but unsure where to go, you need to go check out erikallenmedia.com. Click on the resources tab there. I will walk you through how to start, launch, and run a podcast. I've recorded over 500 interviews since 2017, and I want to help you launch your podcast. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you catch every show when I drop them. Thanks again. Keep changing the world.